Hey, tennis fans, I'm Ben Lewis.
And I'm Mike McIntyre.
And you're listening to Matchpoint Canada.
Very happy to welcome back to the podcast a regular guest of ours on Matchpoint Canada over the years. She's a former top 10 singles and doubles player, a Fed Cup winner for her native Slovakia, and the host of a podcast, the Real DNA podcast, which is making its comeback in 2025. Daniela Hantuchova, thank you so much for taking the time for us today.
Mike, thanks so much for having me, and excited for the new season of tennis.
Me too. I always love January. It's like a fresh start for everybody. And even though you're carrying your ranking points from the season before, everyone's kind of hoping that the off-season training they did has paid off and they're going to come out of the gates at the best version of themselves. It seems like we have you on the podcast every time this time of year in January. And I always associate the Australian Open with you in some way because I think you had your deepest run at a slam in singles at the Aussie Open back in 2008, making the semifinals. Why don't we start with some Aussie Open talk from your career? How did this slam compare for you to the other three majors?
Well, exactly as you described it, Mike. It's the happy slam. Everyone is super happy to be here. And you're just so anxious to get on the court and see, what you've done right in your preseason, how much of improvement will turn up in the matches, and just to see where your tennis is. I think that's what everyone is looking forward to. And I was doing the night session yesterday on Rod Laver, and one thing that you appreciate as a player here so much is the crowd. They are such knowledgeable fans, and they do really help you to play your best tennis because they understand their sport. They are a very active nation themselves, and you do feel that when you play in front of them. So I always felt like I did want to perform at my best here, just purely because you get really connected to the fans here. And even years later now, when I come back here, everyone is still so welcoming and remembering what I've done here that it's quite surprising to me, and that's why I think everyone just loves coming back.
Yeah, they're terrific tennis fans there for sure. And from a player perspective, you love to feel that support. Is it a good thing then, a positive, to have one of the majors happen so early in the tennis season when maybe you haven't yet found your complete rhythm yet for the season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't mind having the slam at the beginning of the year. It's just it's so early that you don't really have time to enjoy the Christmas, really.
Right.
Especially coming from overseas, and it's literally like 24th, 25th of Christmas. You're thinking about the long flight you will have to take, and this year everything was starting even earlier.
Right. The season starts before New Year's even.
Yeah. So that's always tough. And you're so comfortable and cozy with your families. So that's the one thing I do not miss anymore these days. But having a slam at the beginning of the year, I think it's great. Because it puts everyone right from the word go, ready to fight for it and see where everyone is. We do have a longer gap then, but I think that's why everyone enjoys being here because players are full of energy, full of hopes for this season, and yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. I just wish maybe a few weeks later.
There's definitely an added factor in Australia. I feel like it's the heat as well. It's very difficult conditions. And how are the conditions so far weather-wise? I haven't looked at the forecast. How are they so far this year? And how did you in your playing career combat that sort of heat? Were you a player that didn't mind having those kind of hot conditions, or were there certain, challenges that posed for you?
Yeah, I love the heat. I always felt like the hotter and the longer the match, the better for me. So I could use my physicality and the fitness that I always worked extremely hard for in the preseason. I would always choose to go to a warm place. I did a lot of preseasons in Cape Town, which I absolutely loved. And from there, it was a short flight here. The conditions were pretty much the same. A couple of times we went up to Nusa, to Gold Coast, did Singapore as well. This time around, I actually came from Bali, so it kind of feels cooler in a way, but I can see the European players going to be struggling a little bit because it is warmer. I'm actually just looking at the venue here. It is warmer than last year. Last year was pretty cold. So far it's been nice. The forecast is steady, which is unusual because Melbourne, you know what we get. You get 20 degrees, 40 degrees, everything. So I think this year we're gonna have the consistency. And yeah, I always did opt for a preseason being in a warm place. We didn't have a Dubai back then.
Right.
It's something new, and a lot of players I think do benefit from that because the conditions are quite similar. So I would always, if I was coaching anyone, I would say, okay, maybe the first 2 weeks of preseason, the fitness part you can do at home, wherever that is, but then you need to get out there to the sun and be outside.
Makes sense. I wish I could follow that advice right now. It was minus 20 here in Toronto last
God.
week. So
No,
very
sorry.
different conditions here in Canada at this point in time. Hey, let's talk about some of the hot topics, I guess, for 2025. And if we start maybe on the men's side, for me, it's the absence in some ways, the notable absence of Rafa Nadal, who's recently retired and not going to be back on tour. Just a couple of thoughts on his career and what his absence means to the game right now.
Oh my gosh, Mike, I don't even know where to start. Honestly, the day when Rafa announced his retirement, it was so emotional. It felt like, I don't know how to describe it, but like part of tennis was gone suddenly.
For sure.
It was incredible. I got to experience what it was like when he played his, not for Davis Cup, but his tournament last match in Spain, in Madrid, where I'm helping the tournament there. And so I was with Feliciano and Gerard, the organizers, sitting in the box, and we were looking at each other. It was so emotional because of everything he's done for our game and the legacy he has created. And even here, you know, we used to stay at the same hotel, and we kind of, it was a special place where, you know, you have the breakfast all together, and I miss that. I don't know. I mean, we need hours and hours to talk about everything Rafa has done for the game and the person he is, and let's just hope in some ways he's going to find ways to be back and be involved, so that, you know, whether it's TV or tournaments or his academy, that we can see him around and we can feel his presence again.
Well, hopefully, maybe you can give him some advice when you bump into him on how to stay integrated in the sport, because you've done a pretty good job yourself.
And I'll send him to be a guest on your podcast.
Well, thank you. And maybe you start with him on the Real DNA podcast first, of course. So that leaves now Novak Djokovic as the last member of the Big Three. Big Four, if you want to include now his one of his coaches, Andy Murray, as well. Big transition time for the sport. With Novak, do you think this year he can reinsert himself into that top conversation with Sinner and Alcaraz? Or, you know, with 38 approaching for him this year, I mean, he's not getting any younger. You think it's going to be that much harder for him to stay with those younger guys?
I mean, with Novak, nothing is impossible. So I would just leave it at that, because any predictions we might make and anything we might think it's a little bit too crazy and too much out there, and that's just over the limit. If there is one person that is able to reach those crazy goals once again, it's Novak. Having Andy next to him, I think it's such a brilliant decision. And in a way, it's nice to have Andy back here, so it doesn't feel as lonely, you know, since Roger and Rafa are not here. At least the two of them are still somehow around. And I saw an interview of Andy where he said he felt like Novak was ready. So when Andy says that,
yeah, you can trust that judgment for sure.
Yeah, we better listen.
Tell me why you think it's a great move on Novak's part to team up with Andy, because I mean, I can certainly see, as a former player and a colleague of his and a competitor of his, the ability to share that information, but also someone who's never been a coach before. So you tell me why you think it's such a good move.
It's just having someone of that caliber trusting your game. That's already like 10% improvement right then. When one of your biggest rivals and one of the best players in history of our game is now in your box supporting you. We've got the new seating system where actually the coach can be on the court. So if it feel like, and knowing how Andy is, you know, determined to everything he does, it will be like he will be playing the match with him in a way. Plus, I mean, tactically, he is brilliant. And I don't know, whenever I spoke with Martina Hingis, who was a great mentor to me, and we would have dinner, and she would talk to me about how she felt on the court. Or I remember she told me once, second time I won Indian Wells, I beat her in the quarterfinals, and she goes like, "Dani, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "You are by far the best pure hitter of the ball. Why are you not winning this tournament?"
Right.
And early enough, a couple of days later, I win the tournament just because it's coming from her. That
It
like
gave you a
those
boost, like a
that,
confidence boost, or
yeah. So Andy might be saying the same thing that Goran was saying, and all and Marian, but just because the caliber of that name, I think it's going to help Novak big time.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I'm just curious. I've been asked the question so much myself lately. I was interested in your take, and that makes perfect sense. It's interesting you mentioned Martina Hingis, and gosh, I remember watching you and her play doubles together here in Toronto at the Rogers Cup back in the day. Not too many years ago, actually. Um, she was the last woman at the Aussie Open, I believe, to win 3 consecutive times here, or in Melbourne, I should say, the women's singles title. So I'm curious, Sabalenka, she's going for that same feat this year to try and match Steffi Graf, who did it, Monica Seles, who did it. Do you think if Sabalenka is able to do that this year, that it kind of bumps her into a different echelon when we look at the overall women's game and accomplishments in the past, few decades?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if she wins this time around, which I believe she should, and to me, she's the favorite to go all the way, it will put her into the category, okay, is she going to be one of the greatest of all time? Especially her hard court record is incredible. So I think, it seems like with every week she played excellent in Brisbane. She's getting more and more and more confident with every week, with every month, with every year she spends on the tour. And yesterday I commentated her match, and she was a little bit rusty at times, but right away now she reacts and she adapts to what she has to do, where before it would take her so much longer. I think she also looks fitter than 12 months ago. So it seems like she's always, on the improvement path, which is not easy to do when you're already number one in the world and already won this tournament twice.
Who do you think can be some of the women out there to really challenge and push her this year? Certainly Coco Gauff has been terrific since that coaching change back in October. I think she's 18-2 or something like that coming into this year, which is terrific. Iga Swiatek, new coach as well. There are a few of them with new coaches, so it'll be interesting to see. Naomi Osaka working with Patrick Mouratoglou as well. Who are a short list of players that you think can also contend and push Aryna?
Yeah, I would say Coco is the one that I think is gonna challenge her not only here but throughout the season. Iga as well. I just feel like Melbourne for Iga is a little bit. She likes to be very precise with her habits and everything she does on and off the court. And the crowd here is much more loose. It's the Aussie attitude. So I think she's a little bit too serious to win this slam. I think she's going to have her chances, obviously, at Roland Garros and US Open as well. But I feel like this tournament really fits Sabalenka personality. And I was talking about the crowd earlier. They really connect to you when you play a good tennis, or even if you play your wars, but you have a great attitude. Fans absolutely love it here. And I think Sabalenka is made for this tournament.
Yeah, right on. Hey, as the year kicks off here, I'm curious, and we've asked some of our guests lately. I guess you can only ask these New Year's related questions for so long, so I'm hanging on here. But any New Year's resolutions for you this year, either related to tennis or outside of tennis?
Oh, I stopped doing New Year's resolutions a long time ago. I feel like, the way to improve and enjoy life and hopefully become a better person, better in what we do. It's a everyday work. So I believe in the consistency, whether it's at the beginning of the year or throughout the year. And I guess say is to be healthy, to be happy, to have the people we have around ourselves that we love, and the rest really is just a bonus.
Yeah, well said. I've stopped setting targets for myself too because I never made them. So there you go. What about a New Year's resolution for the ATP or WTA in terms of what you would say maybe is their biggest challenge to address this season for the overall good and promotion of the game?
That's a very good question. Well, now that I work closely with the Madrid tournament and I see the player side of things as well, from what I experienced, I would just say maybe to have a little bit more enjoyment, because obviously there's so much prize money these days and the tournaments are run at such an incredible level of everything, from the player lounge to the recovery. I mean, Australian Open is probably the best example of that. And sometimes, when we, of course, it's the nature of athletes to always demand more from ourselves and from everyone around. But, sometimes just to sit back and appreciate everything that, tennis is giving to the community, to the players, to us, that we follow the sport, and just how lucky we are to be in whatever way part of it.
No, absolutely. And continued growth of the sport, of course. I just finished printing the draws off for my kids who like to fill out the brackets now. And
Nice.
it's just exciting to also remember, hey, tennis is a sport that's not just for all of us adults, right? It's for the kids too. And that's who you have to hook to bring them up and hopefully, turn them onto the sport as well with all the other sports that are out there competing with tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we all started. And I've always said that, that strength and energy you have as a kid to dream without any hesitation, without any complications, know how wise, when, I experienced it myself. When I was 5 years old, I decided because of Miroslav Metzger, I'm going to go to the Olympics. And there was never a doubt in my mind that it's not going to happen. And, I didn't have a racket and my parents couldn't afford to book a practice court for me. But, whatever is created in that little mind of children, that's the purity of dreams, purity of love. And we have to support it as much as we can.
Well said. Here in Canada, of course, they're looking up to players like Leylah Fernandez and Felix Auger-Aliassime, who just started his year with a title, which was really nice to see. For him and his confidence moving forward. How do you feel about the Canadians coming into 2025? And there aren't as many of them, of course, as some countries, but what do you think they might be able to accomplish this year? What are your sort of expectations for our crew of athletes?
Yeah, I hope, except hockey, where you guys are not allowed to beat us. I hope
I knew you were going to say something hockey related today.
That in tennis it goes well for you guys. Obviously, Felix is having already a great season and had a fantastic one last year as well. Great to see Leylah playing some good tennis. Hopefully, Bianca can be back soon as well. So, you have so much potential. That's for sure. And hopefully, the season is very long, and hopefully, it's sometimes enough that one of them plays really good, and then. Because we are not such a big tennis nation, whether it's you guys or us, it's enough to tell yourself, okay, well, if he or she's doing well, why can't I? And then suddenly the snowball starts to keep rolling. So I do hope that happens. Felix is standing up there, and hopefully the girls will follow as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to see that. It'd be good for our podcast too, of course. So selfishly, we like to see that as well. Actually, I lied earlier. I do have a New Year's resolution that relates to the podcast, and I'm going to try and go back this year and re-listen to my previous interviews with guests to see where I haven't gone yet with them. And one question that last year, as soon as I got off the air with you, that I was kind of kicking myself for not asking, and it's kind of a niche question, but you won all 4 Grand Slams in mixed doubles, which is such a cool kind of accomplishment. It's not the obvious, it's not the regular. I don't know how many players have done it, but is that something you ever think about, or at the end of your career, was that one of the things? I know mixed doubles wasn't as competitive for you, obviously, as the singles and the women's doubles. But, when you look back, what do you make of that result that you were able to achieve?
Yeah, I think it was pretty cool, especially because it happened so early. For me, I think I was 17, 18 when we won Wimbledon, and then Australian Open was right after that. But looking back at that, what I remember more than the trophy is how much fun I had with the guys playing the mixed doubles. It's really my favorite event because it's a little bit more fun than doubles. You've got the guys there to kind of guide you. Most of them would warm me up for my singles matches as well, and just remembering how much fun I had with all 4 of them was super cool. And the way I see how competitive it is now these days, not that it wasn't before, but it's like maybe I appreciate it more now than when it was actually happening, because I was so focused on my singles. But it did help my singles game as well, because I got to return Brian Brothers serves, and had to really learn quickly how to be fast at the net. So yeah, I would encourage any young player out there, if they're healthy, to play as much mixed doubles as possible, because first of all, it's so much fun and it can only help your game.
You got all the trophies still somewhere special that you get to see every now and then, or?
I do. Actually, it was funny because when we won here, the mixed doubles, I also made it into the finals of doubles, and back then we were getting those big kangaroos.
Okay.
Remember? So I came to the airport
With two of them?
With two of them, and then my mom was, I think, no, it was like a lot of stuff to bring home. But the funny thing is, the actual Grand Slam trophies, when I look at a place where I have my trophies, are the smallest ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because obviously you get the replicas and they're the most precious ones, but they're small in size.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have very many trophies, so it's hard for me to relate. This is probably
Funny story though.
Yeah.
It was this very hotel where I feel so embarrassed, and I hope she will not be listening to this, but I did forget my doubles the second time we made it to the finals, doubles trophy for the finals here at the hotel.
You left it behind.
I left it behind, which is not a problem, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that, and the hotel had to call me like, yes. So yeah, it was in this very, very same hotel.
They shipped it to you. I take it you have it now.
Yes, yes. But
good.
It's like, maybe I should remember that.
My goodness. Well, that's a sign that you've obviously won too many or many trophies in your career when you start leaving them behind like that. So must be a good thing.
Yeah, I know. There's no excuse for that. And I never told my partner.
I love that. Hey, before we wrap up, Danny, just curious about what 2025 has in store for you in terms of your plans, in terms of the tournaments you're going to work, the podcast. I think you mentioned to me Real DNA podcast is making a return this year. So why don't you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about where they can find you and see what you're up to?
Yeah, really looking forward to 25. Quite a few new projects. Also, going to do few kind of a motivational fitness nutrition programs in Slovakia. Will be part of podcast as well. Super excited about having a new season of the Real DNA, where we'll have interesting guests that I will hopefully try to focus mainly on what's close to my heart. Is how we can keep up staying healthy, taking care of ourselves at any age. I think that's one of our objectives as we get older. And traveling quite a bit to the big tournaments to obviously do TV and commentary, being part of Madrid organization team, which was a great new role for me and a great challenge and learning experience. So yeah, quite a bit on the plate, but at the same time I will make sure that I have the time with my boyfriend to play as much golf as we can and enjoy ourselves and do the things that we like to do.
And get some skiing in too, I guess, right? That's one of your other hobbies.
100%.
Eh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, hey, we wish you all the best guests in the world for your podcast. And, speaking of great guests, you've always been a terrific one for us. So thank you again for taking the time, ladies and gentlemen. Daniela Hantuchova, come back anytime.
Thanks so much, Mike, for having me.